So for the folks who are going to be joining us on YouTube, because I'm going to put this up on YouTube, we're going over the patch notes for version 1.14, the open beta launch of Eternal. Eternal is now in open beta. I'm so excited, guys. Anyone can play this game now, and I'm sure that many people will be playing. I believe it's still a little bit hush, like they're not doing like major advertising for it yet, because they're making sure that this version is stable before they start pushing it out. But yeah, like it's really cool that we're going to be able to share this game with the world, and I'm so excited to be part of that. So what we know is that there have been a significant amount of economy changes and card changes, and we're kind of going to talk mostly about the card changes and what's been changing with the meta. But now we can actually purchase gems. These things allow us to, of course, buy new packs, and you get 3 free packs of each new set forever if you make any purchase of gems. So you are gonna be like totally good for all of that. Should be great. Yeah, so like I'm very excited to spend money on this game. I'm gonna try to do a free-to-play run up to master first, but we will see how that goes. And if it's going a little slow, I might even abandon it. I want to be like entertaining, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think that a free-to-play run is like totally possible. This game has been it was very easy for me to get a full collection in like the first couple of months, and I think that it's quite easy to get a deck going that's going to be pretty straightforward for you. So I think it should be quite good. So let's talk about the card changes. There are a bunch of new cards, and let's go through each of them in turn, because I haven't even seen the arts for these cards yet. Alright, so first off we have Cabal Countess, which is a new Shadow Ambush unit with pretty sweet art, it looks like. Alright. Yeah, Cabal Countess is a 3 Shadow Ambush 4/1 with an ultimate of pay 4 to give her +2 attack and quick draw. The 6/1 quick draw, of course, is pretty nasty. It's fairly unblockable unit. As an ambush unit, this card kills a lot of stuff. It's a reasonable card for like yet another form of shadow removal. I don't like the art very much, but whatever. It's okay. Let's go with the next one, Felon Cauldron. I think this card, yeah, this card is going to be like pretty flexible, and it's nice to have a sink as far as Cabal Countess goes. Felon Cauldron. Felon Cauldron looks sweet. All right. So once per turn, you can discard a card to gain 1 health. After 5 cards, you sacrifice Felon Cauldron to draw 5 random spells. This is the Hearthstoniest card I have ever seen Eternal release. The 5 random spells is probably pretty close to a win condition. The discarding a card to gain 1 health is kind of like a really interesting achievement, and should be pretty solid, I think. I'm not sure about this card. I don't know if it's good yet. There are a lot of different ways that you can make discard outlets extremely solid, and the main ones being Privilege of Rank and like cards like Dawnwalker or Ephemeral Wisp, but all of those cards don't exist in Feln, so it's going to be like pretty crazy. Please click the question mark. What's the question mark? Is there a question mark floating around? Ow. I don't even see those sometimes. All right, here we go. Yeah, so this card's going to be a really fun Brew Around Me card. It's hard to say if it's going to be super good, but I think that the quality of spells and the power of spells is enough that Felon Cauldron should be pretty solid to brew in. And yeah, it should be a really interesting card. I think this card is a trap for early players, so it's nice that it's at a legendary, because it's definitely something that's going to take a lot of work to get working. But if you can actually take advantage of those discard outlets, you can have like some interesting like 5-color decks. And of course, the 5 random spells that you draw will be influence free. I can guarantee that's going to happen. I haven't seen how the card works yet, but the 5 random spells you will be able to play. So like if you draw Channel the Tempest, it won't cost 4 blue influence. It'll just cost 8. So yeah. Huru Fledgling, a common 5 Justice 3/3. We played this card in the tutorial. It's a pretty simple tutorial card. It might be an okay draft card. It's definitely not going to be popular in ranked and won't be played there at all. As far as like medium range flyers go, like medium range evasive units are okay in draft. This card is pretty far on the weak side, I would say, but it's okay. Mark of Shame. This card is also somewhat on the weak side. It is a 3-cost Justice curse that reduces the unit's attack by 3. you know, this is problematic because it doesn't really remove the unit or get rid of the unit in any way. So again, this is a card that you might see as like sort of faux removal in draft. Having a curse for this option is really interesting, and it's kind of a good tutorial card as to how curses work. But overall, I think that this card is really not intended for ranked or really even draft. It's an okay draft card as like a minimal removal spell, but like even the 2/2 that gives a cursed unit that gives another unit -2, I believe it's called Silverwing Avenger, is better than this card. So we won't be playing too much with this card. But yeah, Vault of the Praxis. I'm intrigued by this one. All right, 4. When you play your second unit in a turn, draw a card. This is a second 4-cost time relic, and the power of it is probably not to be denied. It's definitely going to be an extremely strong card. I think it's actually like a crazy good card, and there's going to be some interesting options for it. It will enable yellow-red token decks to be a lot better because they will be able to renew their power, and of course relics are pretty hard for those types of decks to deal with. This also works pretty well in like a lot of like interesting control setups. If you want to do Chalice control, then Vault of the Praxis will be a card that you can stick in to make it even more drawy stuff. Now we got another one. Okay. Did you know about curses? I knew about curses. Thanks for noting it, Wotar. I honestly can't see those things. They're not the right color for me to see them, I think. I'm not colorblind, but I don't know. They're really unnoticeable for me. Yeti Troublemaker's new. It's a 3/2 for 4. Oh, it's got Echo though. I can see this card being played some in Crown of Possibilities decks. It's got a reasonable enough stat line that it's actually going to be okay in Crown, and having another source of Echo units might actually be a reasonable alternative to Twinbrood Sauropod. It is noticeably weaker than Twinbrood Sauropod, so like we are going to see like probably not as much happening with this card. I think it's probably a pretty good card in draft in particular. Like if you're running second sight based decks, then Yeti Troublemaker is going to be like a really fun enforcer card, so that's going to be kind of neat. You guys think the art is ugly? I don't know. I'm pretty psyched about it. It's obviously like an ugly Yeti, and the fact that he's like holding a knife in his mouth Rambo style is kind of cute to me. And also clotheslining a horse. That's pretty solid. Yeah, weird looking Yeti, but yeah, he is definitely like designed to be like a little bit weird. So that's all of the new cards. There's nothing else new that we know of. I'm pretty sure that like Humbug didn't suddenly become a card, right? Okay, I lied. Humbug is a card. Has Humbug always been a card? Alright, anyways, Bronze Cuirass. I don't believe Humbug is actually going to be in packs. So yes, Bronze Cuirass. So this is a 4 Justice 0/4 now, instead of a 0/6. What we're doing... Oh. Back it up a little bit. We're talking about the cards that have been redesigned now. Bronze Cuirass now draws you a card. And instead of being a 0/6, it's a 0/4. I think this card's going to be pretty strong in draft. It will protect you from torches. It'll actually be like a kind of decent card in that particular respect. It's still not going to be powerful in ranked, but there might be a small place for a card that gives your units added toughness while not actually like disadvantaging you as far as cards go. I think that that's pretty unlikely though. All right, anyways, Cabal Cutthroat has changed from being a 5-drop of awesomeness that plays with slow to being a 2/2 lifesteal. And, you know, that's fine. He's a pretty solid 2-drop. He's got, like, a lot of strength in, like, Argenport decks. So this redesign opens up another line of cards in, like, the purple-green archetype. And that's going to make purple-green a bit more common. I think the counter colors are trying to be designed around in such a way that we can actually play cards that aren't just hybrid. And so when you're playing in draft and when you're playing in other modes, you're going to be able to pick opposing color pairs, which is to say the color pairs that aren't next to each other in the list. So Cabal Cutthroat helps out with that quite a bit. It could be a much stronger card than I'm giving it credit for. It's very simple in its design, and so it's going to be hard to really evaluate that. What it was before was a 5/5 charge that when it also had lifesteal. Or a 5-cost charge that was a 2/2 with charge and lifesteal, and when it damaged your opponent, it had infiltrate, deal damage to them equal to the highest cost card in their hand. So it used to be very, very complicated, and it worked okay with slow decks, but with decks that had the card slow in them, but it didn't work very well in anything else. It was just one of those things that never quite had the execution. Champion of Cunning. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you so much for changing this card. I'm so happy right now, guys. I'm so happy. Alright, so Champion of Cunning now has a personal bonus of flying an Aegis when it has 4 blue influence, as opposed to being a card that gives everything else flying and charge and just ends the game when it comes out. This thing is a crazy one. It used to be a crazy one-hit KO card. Now it's a really impressive control card that you get to play down. It's very resistant to spells, and it also like buffs your units, so it gets like a pretty solid, almost automatic bonus when you play it. I think this card is going to be nuts. It's really quite strong, and thank God that it is not what it used to be. Just thank you so much. All right. Yeah, this card still definitely helps you close out the game, Wodar, but I think it helps you close out the game in the same sense that like a Seraph is going to help you close out the game. It is a card that actually gives your opponent a chance to respond to it. And Champion of Cunning did not previously do that at all, because you just couldn't answer it. There wasn't a way to get it out of your opponent's hand reliably, and it didn't really respond to any removal once it was on the ground. This one does respond to removal. It costs your opponent a lot of cards, and it significantly improves your board state if you are in any sort of even board state, the same as the previous Champion of Cunning did. So yeah, this card's really cool. I love the design. I think it's going to be a much better card. It's still going to annoy me probably, but it's never going to be as rage-inspiring as the original Champion. Gilded Glaive. Alright, Gilded Glaive has changed quite a bit. It's, oh, it's 3 cost. Okay. I think Scarletch originally said that this was a 5 cost card, which isn't really all that good. This is different. So, a +2/+2 that gets Empower +2/+2. That's a 4 health swing if you can hit your Empowers. There's the chance that this card is actually going to be reasonably strong. I think it is actually a playable card. It looks fairly weak, and it has some issues, namely that it's not going to allow you to protect 1/1s from torches, which is a pretty significant downgrade from the original Gilded Glaive. It's not going to be great, but it will work well on cards like Bright Mace Paladin and on cards like Silverwing Familiar. It will still be a playable card in those respects, I think. But it's definitely not the crazy swing that it used to be, and that's fine. Push Onward is no longer a card. It's called Scheme now. And it's a purple card. So you draw one of the top 4 cards of your deck, and you put the rest on the bottom. This doesn't reduce the cost of the spell anymore, which is kind of interesting. This is probably gonna be... I don't know. I'm not sure if it's weaker than Push Onward. It certainly seems like it might be, because the ability to not have, like, 1-cost backlashes, or to make 4-cost units for Haunting Scream, or to get, like, a Dimensional Rift and play it on 9, like, there are some pretty sweet things there. It looks like Cabal Mastermind is scheming now. Yes, that's right. So, yeah. But I really like this card in purple. I think that that's a cool color change, and it gives the color a little bit more identity, because purple is definitely the card, the color of like the rebellion and like the kind of shadowy cabal, the shadowy cabal. Yeah, so like it's kind of neat that this card is in purple now. I'll dearly miss it in blue because I'm a huge Elysian player. I'm a huge Feln player, but I don't really think that. Yeah, I don't play Feln as much as I play Elysian, so I'm going to see a lot less of this card. Yeah, it should still be pretty good, though. It definitely gives you very good options, and I think that that's going to be a strong effect. Okay. What's next? Push Onward's gone, so Secret Pages is next. Secret Pages has gotten one of the most significant changes. Instead of being a 2-cost Echo card that just draws you cards, this now says play a sigil of your choice from your deck depleted. It still serves its purpose as a 4-of include in any deck where you're trying to go like 4 colors, of course. But what this card does now is ramp, and it is the only 3-cost ramp card in the game that I can think of. Yeah, there aren't any others. There's Initiative of the Sands, there's Secret Pages, and there's Martial Ironthorn at 5. So these are the 3 ramp cards in the game. And the fact that there is a 3rd ramp card in the game is going to open up some really interesting archetypes. I think this card is going to be kind of amazing. I think this card is really, really fun. And I think that it interacts with your deck in a way that's like a lot more interesting than the previous Secret Pages did. The previous Secret Pages was just kind of an automatic include in any time control deck. This one, you're going to have to put a little bit more thought in as to whether or not you're going to want the ramp. But it will still serve its purpose if you need that extra thing. I see we've got another question mark. Alright, Skycrag Wyvark. This one changed. This card is now a really good draft card. It wasn't a very good draft card before, even though it was a 5/5 flying. But now it has flying and killer, so it's something that picks off a 2/2 and then becomes like a fairly annoying flying threat. I think this card has some strengths. It's going to be pretty decent. It might re-enable Cloudsnake Saddle as a card. I think it's probably still going to see mostly play in draft, but it's nice to have a 3/3 killer in the mix, especially now that one of the cards has been removed. What is it called? Stonescar, Slagmite Swarm. Slagmite Swarm is gone, so Skycrag Wyvark is its replacement, and it's a pretty solid choice. Synchronized Strike is a card I find somewhat underwhelming, but is fine. Now it gives your units +1/+1 this turn. As far as things go, I'm not super excited by this card. It enables token strategies in draft. It's probably not playable in ranked, but it might be okay. There's a chance that I am underestimating this card's power, but really it's mostly a cheaper rally, which is kind of still not a very good card in ranked. I think it'll be okay in draft. It'll be something that you can pick, but it's not anything I'm super excited about. I liked the old one better, but I think this one's fine. And it is nice that it enables token strategies to be a little bit better in draft. Okay, some functional changes. Ancient Terrazon is now an 8/8 and a legendary. That's gonna be interesting. Being an 8/8 doesn't change Ancient Terrazon's pattern very much, but it certainly does give it a slight boost. Being a legendary is weird. This card was not played much as a rare. It might be okay as a legendary. We'll see. It's got a really lovely bit of premium art. Arachnodon is now 7 primal and a 5/6. It's still terrible, don't play it. Just don't. It might be a little bit better in draft now that the body is actually reasonable, but I wouldn't really count on it, guys. Blackguard's Sidearm is now a 3-cost +2/+1. This one's interesting. It's a better draft card, I think, and a worse ranked card. It works very well with the new Cabal Cutthroat. I'm not sure if this card is going to be all that strong. It basically has a reduced stat line for cost value because the +1 health doesn't help all that much. But the quick draw ability is still pretty relevant, and there are reasons that you might want to run this card. There are reasons that people have run these cards before. Overall, it's not really a huge improvement on the card, but it's much better in draft, I would say. Okay, so Blazing Renegade. Blazing Renegade is now a 3/2. That's a super sweet buff. Blazing Renegade was basically unplayable in draft. This puts it probably in the lane of being playable. It's still not a card you want to run in ranked, but it's fine. Cabal Recruiter. Cabal Recruiter is now a 1/4. Oh, that's interesting. It's torch resistant now, which I think is very strong. The infiltrate effect has always been strong, and I think it's kind of actually a pretty decent design. The fact that I like the fact that it's not offensive, because it is of course a recruiter. It's not like a person that's trying to damage you. So yeah, that's kind of neat. That's a really good design, I think. I like this design better than I like the previous Cabal Recruiter, and I don't think that this is a nerf either, because Cabal Recruiter was just, it was awful. Previously, it was way too expensive and it died to torch. This is a much better card, and the fact that it has to suffocate is rough, but being able to be resistant to torch is a pretty important deal. And yeah, I think I'm pretty fond of this card. I will actually probably end up playing it in the deck sometime. Cloudsnake Carrier. Oh yeah, and like this actually opens some things up, right? Because Cabal Recruiter was previously just kind of terrible against Rakano decks, which is where it's the most fun, right? Like, Cabal Recruiter is a card that you want to play against Rakano decks to steal their biggest Warcry unit and make sure that they can't play units for a couple of turns. That effect is actually really powerful, but it was terrible against Rakano because Rakano has Torch and Rakano has Piercing Shot and Rakano has all of these different things that kill Recruiter. Now that can't happen, so this is maybe a counter Rakano card. There's potential for this card. Cloudsnake Harrier. Cloudsnake Harrier? It is Cloudsnake Harrier. Oh, it's called Nesting Avatar now. Okay, Nesting Avasaur is a 3/3. It costs 4 time and primal. Okay, so it's still the same card that it always was. It's now very specifically in the Crown of Possibilities level. You're not going to be playing it in certain other types of decks, but overall this doesn't change it too much. Yeah, this is okay. Alright, so now we got Cloudsnake Harrier. Oh, wait, so... Name changes. Copperhall Blessing. It used to be Blinding Burst, and is the same? It's 1 Justice less, which makes it a reasonably different card. Might see a little bit more play due to the fact that it can be splashed into some other decks. That's going to be kind of interesting to see. There's not really a major change to this card except that it's rare now, so it's not going to be seen in draft quite as much. But it was always a good swing in draft, so it's nice that it's been rarefied. Proud Favorite, 3/4 now. Okay, that's pretty cool. That definitely improves the strength of this card. I can see it being a very strong draft card. I can see it playing a little bit more in ranked now that it's resistant to Torch. Dawnwalker now exhausts when it comes back from the grave. This is probably a very reasonable change. It's very sad that you can't give Dawnwalkers charge and killer anymore and make them like super ridiculous. And you can't, but like Dawnwalker existed in a state where it was just always in the void and therefore impossible to deal with for cards for decks that didn't have ways to deal with it. The main problem with this, of course, is that it makes it like significantly harder to avoid silence effects. So Dawnwalker is going to have like a lot more problems, and this might actually reduce its strength in the Combrei and Elysian cheese decks. But it's still a pretty strong card overall. Desert Marshal is now a 2/1. I believe there was a lot of popular outcry for this card to be a 2/1. I think that is certainly a nerf. It'll be killable by Vara's Favor now. Maybe people will run a little less silences in their deck as a result, and maybe the Combrei archetype will be a little bit more tolerable and a little bit taken down a bit. So that's going to be okay. We'll go with that. Oh, did Seraph start exhausting? I didn't see if she got changed. Yeah, she exhausts now. So you can't play endless amounts of time and justice units when you play Ironthorn decks. I did an article literally today about this exact archetype, about playing Ironthorn out with New Tomorrow and stuff so that you can just Seraph over and over again. But yeah, it's pretty solid. In any case, these two cards remain very strong, but they did get mild nerfs that should take Combrei down enough to actually put it on a competitive level where you're going to see other meta decks rising up. Okay, Divining Rod is now 6-time and a 3/3. The effect is still really powerful, but it can no longer cheat things out cheaply. RIP Greed Dragon, RIP Reanimator decks that use Death Touch. It's still a very swingy card. It's going to be quite fun in like Flight School decks and other decks that are running like extremely strong creature-based strategies. We might not see this card come back in a big way until set 2 when we have more cards that actually share skills so that people can play a higher density of better creatures with the same skills. Yeah. Eastwind Herald is now boring. I wouldn't play it, but it's okay. Elder's Feather is a +1/+0. I'm totally fine with this change, and I'm super amused that it had to be done. Elder's Feather is just an insanely powerful weapon. Like, it's really quite good in, like, Rakano Rush decks, and it made Rakano decks very, very tough and difficult. And it's one of the most underrated weapons in the game as far as, like, newbies coming into the game see, because obviously it doesn't look like it provides much in terms of stats, and it clearly provides you with card disadvantage, so it doesn't seem like it's going to be a very good card. But because of the effect of Warcry on Elder's Feather has, just kind of gotten completely out of control, and Rakano decks that run Elder's Feather have always been very dominant in the meta. So this is a very easy way to make a very slight tweak and make the Rakano decks a little bit worse. You know, it's fine. It's one of those tiny nerfs that really doesn't matter too much in the grand scheme of themes. Fearless Nomad has Overwhelm again. Did nothing else change? Oh, it's rare now, right. So it can't kill people in draft anymore, but it's got Overwhelm again, which is good because it always deserved it. I mean, you know, we like Fearless Nomad. We're pretty excited to see him back again. But I'm also quite happy not to see him in draft, because he was always kind of a trap in draft, because he actually costs 2 in draft. There's no way to play Fearless Nomad on 1 in a draft, because you don't get seats in packs. Grasping at Shadows has a 2 primal cost now, so looks like they're cutting back on Reanimator a little bit. But overall, this isn't a major change. It's just going to be slightly less of a splash, and you won't be able to do things like Reanimate Ikaria as a splash. Hair Trigger Stranger now gives Strangers Quick Draw, and is purple-red, which I believe means that it replaces the one that says Strangers have Charge. Yep. Replace the one that says Strangers have Charge. So that one's gone. But the new one, the 2/2 Strangers have Quick Draw, is actually a pretty solid card. It's kind of nice to see Hair Trigger Stranger in a place where it's not going to be killed quite so easily. I think that's going to be a stronger Stranger effect overall. Hatchery Hunter is 3 primal now. Its Sky Serpents also cost 3 primal. This is not a major change. Hatchery Hunter wasn't really played in ranked, but it will make it harder for Elysian decks to splash in for Hatchery Hunter. And so, like, some of the draft type archetypes will have a harder time with using Hatchery Hunter. They're going to have to build a lot more around it, and it's going to be a tougher deal for them to win the game with just this card's strength alone. So that's a draft update. Huru Envoy. Now 3 and 2 Justice instead of being a 2, and is a 2/2 instead of being a 2/1. So the deeper Justice requirement is pretty important for Huru Envoy, because Huru Envoy wants to be targeted by a lot of different spells. So if you're going to be building a deck that's based around a lot of different spells, then that's kind of relevant. On the other hand, at a 2/2, this card is actually playable. Like, it was just one of those little engines that really couldn't previously, and there wasn't a way to make it work quite effectively because it was just a little too easy to kill. And it just, even after you put spells on it, it would often just be blocked by something. Having an extra point of toughness is going to give Huru Envoy a bit more of a chance. And I think that there's going to be a deck archetype around this deck sometime soon. We will see. I might be the one to build it. Knight Chancellor Seraph exhausts. We talked about that already. Lithrai Falchion is now different. It's a 4/1 lifesteal. It was a 3/1 lifesteal before? It's a better card. Okay, yeah. Oh, but it doesn't give Overwhelm. No, okay. Well, this card's boring now. Let's see here. It doesn't interact with infiltrate weapons anymore, but it does provide you a pretty decent splash if you want to make sure that you have some kind of health gain in your ranked decks. And I think that that's actually pretty relevant. I don't think enough people ran Lithrai Falchion in decks that like really needed to answer red aggro decks. And the very end of the meta of closed beta was a lot of like people running Flame Blast and Obliterate, and this is where this card actually really starts to shine. So Lithrai Falchion fills that role better, but the lack of Overwhelm means that Infiltrate units are going to be really, really sad about it. Alright. Merciless Stranger. A card that is, yeah, so Lithrai Ranger is a card whose design I don't favor as much, but is still probably just as strong. Merciless Stranger. Used to be Time, now it's Shadow. That fits it a little better. Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. Also gives a little bit better draft options to Shadow Strangers, which is good stuff. Mistveil Drake, you are now 7 cost. And it has Aegis, okay. So yeah, that's a little bit stronger, I think. You still draw Mistveil Drake using like Celestial Omen or Push Onward or Second Sight or all of those things to just continually repeat that Aegis effect. And then like the result is that you have a larger, more inevitable creature in your control deck that is harder for other control decks to kill. I think this is a stronger card. The fact that it costs more is pretty awkward, but it does make it. It does take it from being a 6/6 that you just never want to play to a 6/6 that you want to play sometimes, but you won't always be able to afford. All right, Morningstar. Morningstar is different again. It is now entirely red. It's +3/+3 in Overwhelm. It's a much more exciting card than it used to be as a 4/3 in Time and Fire. I think it's a much stronger draft card. This card now fills the role that Lethrai Felchen is leaving behind in terms of enabling infiltrate units. So that's pretty cool because overwhelm damage still triggers infiltrate. So yeah, Morningstar is going to see some play in like weird red-purple decks. That's going to be cool. Once again, I'm really excited that they're like enabling like different new color combination things. This is actually still an allied color pair, but the overwhelm's pretty exciting. And I think this card is like a much better design than the second iteration of Morningstar, this one being the third. What's next? New tomorrow. All right, guys. It just keeps happening. This one now plays the top 10 power from your deck depleted. This is not a nerf. This card is actually buffed because it is the yellow and the green, and it is not 2 yellow, 2 green, so you can actually play it a little bit more often. It's not like a huge change overall. The fact that it plays the top 10 power versus the top 12 power is almost completely insignificant. You're still never going to run out of gas if you play this card. However, the first person to like send me a video of them playing a New Tomorrow and then drawing a power like gets a cookie. Yeah, so I think that this card is still almost exactly the same as it always was, but I really loved the design as like, I believe it's a Timmy, is it? As a Timmy, I really love the design that was just play all of the power in your deck and play it depleted. Like that was a fun number for me. So it going down by 2 doesn't really affect it at all. I'm not really sad about this. I'm just a little sad that that number keeps getting less and less overwhelmingly like just awesome. Okay. Anyways, you know, it's a cool design. It's a really good card. It hasn't changed in the slightest. Oasis Sanctuary is better now. It's still bad. Don't run it, but it's not quite as horridly inefficient as it used to be. Polymorph. Transform a unit into a 1/1 frog. Next change will be play the top 8. What are we talking about here? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, we're talking about New Tomorrow. Got it. Polymorph is 1 less primal influence. I think that's pretty cool. I think it's going to be seen as a splash in more decks. I also think it's going to see a little bit more play, and that's pretty neat. Overall, I was never really fond of this card as a piece of removal. Taking an influence off of it makes it a little bit more playable, even in just like blue hybrid decks that always want to run this anyways. So yeah, it's a slight buff to this card, and it needed a slight buff. Psionic Savant is now entirely primal. That's okay. It makes it a better draft card. It's still not going to see play in ranked, but it's okay. I'll be right back. There's a buzzing noise I have to take care of. Alright. Pyro Knight got a very needed nerf, actually. Pyro Knight was always like just an incredibly good flexible card, and now it's still an incredibly good flexible card, but the bonus that it gets costs 6 instead of 5. That increases the range of decks in which you want to play it a little bit. I think this card is now like a little bit more viable in mid-range and a little bit less viable in early aggro decks. As it was, Pyro Knight was always triggering a little too soon when you were trying to deal with so many other threats. And so it just made it so that decks that ran out a lot of Stonescar Burn and other stuff like that would just like, you'd be able to deal with a bunch of their stuff and stabilize, and then Pyro Knight would kill you because you couldn't deal with Pyro Knight and all of their other stuff. I like this change quite a bit. I think it's a pretty solid nerf, and I think it's not going to affect Pyro Knight's overall versatility all that much. I think it is going to make it so that people are going to be slightly less likely to pick Pyro Knight, and man, do I love that art. Man, I didn't notice how cool this was. That's pretty sweet, right? I gotta get some premium Pyro Knights. Alright, Sanctuary Priest is on the cusp of viable now. It's a 1/2, which doesn't make a huge difference, but it allows it to do things like block Blood Beetles. So there are a lot of cards that interact with health gain apparently coming in set 2 that are going to make this card possibly a potential pick. That is what Scarlatch says. I'll believe him on that. At the moment, it's not really a playable card, but, you know, it is stronger now than it was before, and it's not quite as much of a laughingstock. So that's pretty good. Sandform. Sandform is not Sandform anymore. It's called Twinning Ritual, a name which I don't like, and I hope that they change it. Oh, it's just called Twinning. Okay. That's better, but still weird. It's got the bad Gemini Ritual art. I do not like that art at all. But all the same, in any case, draw a copy of a unit in your hand, and the copy gets +1/+1. Will be okay with this card. It's certainly still fine. It's now Elysian, so it's once again a card that is much more focused around Crown of Possibilities. We're going to see it less in certain other archetypes. There's not that many cards. I can't think of a non-Elysian deck that didn't use Twinning before, so yeah, we'll see how that goes. I miss Sandform. What is Gemini Ritual called now? Is it still Gemini Ritual? It got changed, I know. We'll get to it, I'm sure. Scouting Party. Maybe it got removed. I hope it didn't get removed. Scouting Party is now rare. It's no longer a promo, and it costs 6. This is a pretty reasonable change to the card, I think. It was fairly strong already, and this puts it into place where it's like significantly more of an investment. I don't think I ever noticed the fish in the background there. That's amazing. They must like have that fish on a pike or something. Yeah, it's a reasonable nerf to the card. It should stabilize the meta a little bit. Scouting Party won't just be an automatic win card anymore. So that's kind of cool. Seer's Companion. Not Tinker Overseer. Seer's Companion has been changed to Humbug. Oh, okay. So Seer's Companion has been changed to Humbug and no longer has its cool Fate ability. I'm sad, but nobody really played Seer's Companion, so I guess that's fine. Shamanic Trance. You are now named Trail Stories. And you're red. Oh, fascinating. Okay. The card isn't any stronger, really, but the ability to reduce the cost of Greed's Reward is actually a reasonable idea for a red deck. That's the only use that I can think of for it right now. This card has a lot of potential to be stronger in set 2, as I've mentioned before. I think it has some interesting options even in set 1, but that's gonna be weird. Huh. Yeah, not sure what we'll be doing with that deck. We'll see. Anyways, so Shimmer Pack has changed, and it is more awesome. Shimmer Pack now has a little bit more of an influence requirement. It's double time, double blue. But it transforms any number of units into copies of Shimmer Pack, which is great, because it means that you don't get into situations where you can't play Shimmer Pack because it's just not working. Like, you can't, like, play it on your opponent even though you want to get rid of their stuff. You can't play it on yourself because, like, yeah, you need to get rid of some of your opponent's stuff. There were a lot of situations where Shimmer Pack just wasn't the bomb red legendary that you wanted it to be, and this makes it quite a bit stronger. Now you can use it not only to, like, rush out like a bunch of your own 4/4s, but also to turn any of your opponent's cards that are just significant threats into kind of useless Shimmer Packs. So this card's pretty great. Oh, Greed's Reward was removed, huh? That makes me sad. That card was a pretty good safety valve. Alright, well, I liked it, but that's fine. Skysnapper has Reckless now. I guess it was too good in draft. I didn't think it was too good in draft, but it's fine now. This is still not a good card in ranked, and it's still not really a card that I'd pick in draft. I much prefer like Teriax Hatchling if I can get my hands on him. But yeah, this card is okay, and having Reckless doesn't actually change its overall archetype all that much. It just means that it runs into stuff a little bit more often. So it's a little bit lower pick in draft, but not significantly so. Soaring Stranger. Soaring Stranger is now 4. That's pretty good. That actually improves the Stranger archetype quite a bit, Giving the Strangers flying is quite relevant, and giving them flying this early is actually a pretty significant change that's going to make Stranger decks maybe almost possible in set 1. I think that is a significant improvement over Strangers. Soul Collector did something new. It's 2 extra influence. That's not really a big thing. Nothing to see here, guys. Soul Collector already was pretty much almost entirely a primary shadow card, so that's fine. Soulfire Drake now has an extra point of attack. I'm excited about this change. This is going to be a better legendary, and it was already a legendary that we played a little bit in Stonescar mid-range decks, so we might see 1 or 2 of them showing up in all sorts of interesting decks. This is going to be pretty exciting. Strength of the Pack. This was Gemini Ritual. Cool, we got it now. Strength of the Pack. Pack? Okay, so it's got Mirror Image's old art, and it gives you a +3/+3 and plays a copy of it, but it's entirely in Primal. This is an interesting card now. It splashes into different archetypes, which is kind of interesting. Like, there are a lot of like new decks that kind of rise from this legendary. There's a lot of interesting ways that we can build this deck now. And I think the cheaper cost is going to be pretty relevant. It actually makes it playable in the one place that I actually liked this card, which was Elysian midrange decks. I always thought that it was just like a little bit too expensive for Elysian midrange. So reducing the cost by 1 is actually what I would call a buff, even though the influence cost has been increased and the stat line has been decreased. I think this card is quite neat, and we should see some decks based around it pretty soon. Stronghold Visage. Now costs 5. Good riddance. This is a decent nerf to the card. It was a very strong card in general. It worked very well in control decks. It's still going to work very well in control decks, but now it is a little bit awkward and competes with the harsh rule slot. So I think we're going to see a little bit less of this card. But it'll still play in the one deck that plays it, so yeah, the Visage control deck is still going to be a thing. It's just that that deck was, you know, fairly hard for people to deal with, and really frustrating for new players, so I think that increasing the cost of it is going to dissuade people from playing it a little bit, and also make it a little bit easier for people to deal with that. Elysian. Oh, is it Elysian? It's probably Elysian. Well, anyways, Thunderstrike. Thunderstrike Dragon's cheaper now, and also costs a little bit more influence. I think this is a stronger card in draft if you can actually get the influence for it, and it's going to be a much stronger card in ranked for sure. The extra influence is certainly significant, but the cost of this card was fairly prohibitive, and it was still a card that was played, because it's such a powerful effect. Alright, we'll play it for you.
Elysian.
Elysian. Okay. Okay, so let's see here. What have we got? What's next? Thunderstrike Dragon is quite strong. I think that's a significant buff to the card. Touch of the Umbran costs 1 less purple influence. That's pretty exciting. I'd say that's a significant buff. It is now a legendary though, which you know, it's not the most exciting legendary to get in a pack, but it's going to be a fun one. I think that that card is going to be a cool splash in a lot of like late game control decks. It was something that was fairly hard to splash into control decks before. This is going to be like one of my new Ironthorn Impossible cards for sure. So yeah, pretty exciting. We're almost done, guys. Valkyrie Wings. Valkyrie Wings is now +2/+4, Flying Aegis. It's a much better card as a result. It's also been bumped up to rare, which is nice because it keeps it out of the draft archetype, where it was actually almost a little too strong. Getting one of these in draft is now going to be a pretty significant buff to your deck, but it's also going to be much rarer, and I think that it's just a very good card for draft. In ranked, it's still not going to see that much play, but the extra toughness and Aegis effect is actually going to be pretty relevant, and there are a lot of cards that you just want to protect really, really badly that Valkyrie Wings is going to be happy for. Ugh. Let's see here. So now we got Venom Spine Hydra. Why kick the deck that played Visage while it's down? There's a couple of reasons for that, but like the main one is that like the reason that that deck was down was because it was being played so often that people like switched to a much more hyper-aggressive strategy. and a lot of other control decks weren't getting their time in the sun, and that one didn't encourage like an extremely fun playset. So I think that Visage deck is still going to come back in the meta, but like, yeah, it should be an okay change. And also, if there's going to be healing synergy in set 2, that is pretty relevant. Okay, Venom Spine Hydra is one less purple influence, a little bit more playable card. This card's pretty strong in like a early control archetype, so if you get this card, you can actually play it, and that's going to be kind of nice. It's just a mild buff to the deck. Veteran Merc is now a Stranger. He's called Forsworn Stranger now. That's going to make him a better card, because even if he doesn't get the full 5/5 bonus, like he was previously kind of an interesting proposition where if you were playing a Stranger deck, you get a +5/+5 unit that maybe dies to silence. In this instance, you get a +5/+5 unit that doesn't die to silence if you have a Determined Stranger on the board. That's a pretty significant upgrade. I think Forsworn Stranger is actually the strongest, well, maybe the strongest Stranger out there at the moment. There's going to be a lot of potential for this card to be extremely nasty in Stranger decks, and I think that Stranger decks might actually have a chance with Forsworn Stranger inside them. But we'll see. I am still... the jury is still out on whether Strangers are good yet. Water of Life now costs 2? Was it good before? Alright. It's not good now. World Pyre Phoenix. World Pyre Phoenix is a 5/5 that gets +3/+3 and has the cost increased by 3. I think this makes it less good in draft if you get it, but it's a legend. It's a rare, so I guess you always were able to get it before. The effect that it gives you, the +3/+3, is actually significantly stronger. Being able to go up to an 8/8 has not like changed this card too much. I don't think it's a significant nerf to the card. I think in some ways this card is actually better, but only in decks where you can generate like a significant amount of power. So this is maybe a mild nerf to the card. Yeah, overall I think it's fine. Is it a little cheaper than it used to be? I can't remember. I can't remember if it was an 8 cost before. I don't think so. Yeah. Okay, so I don't think it's changed significantly, but it's kind of a different card now. It has different opportunities to play it, and slightly less opportunities to play it. But it does gain in power faster the more you kill it, so that's an interesting update to it. Alright, non-functional changes. We're going to go through these without looking at the art. Accelerated Evo is now rare instead of uncommon. That's fine. It was a very, very strong draft card. Amaran Camel is now common instead of uncommon. It's going to be an interesting draft pick now. Augmented Form is legendary instead of rare. Seems unnecessary, but okay. Bandit Queen is legendary instead of rare. That also seems unnecessary, but okay. But I think Bandit Queen is actually a pretty solid legendary. It does restrict the ability of Stone Scar decks to rush up the ladder cheaply. We'll see how that goes. Bloodbright Callus is now a rare instead of a legendary. That's going to make for some really interesting drafts, guys. Burnout is now uncommon instead of common. That's fine. It doesn't make much of a difference either way. It'll be nice to see less Burnouts in drafts, because Burnout is not really all that good anymore. Carnosaur Behemoth has now been named Dormant Sentinel, which doesn't make a difference. Crown of Possibilities is now a legendary. We mourn thee, Crown of Possibilities. You were a really good cheap deck. The effect, of course, is a really fun legendary. I don't deny that maybe this should be a legendary, but, like, it's so fun. It's kind of sad it's not a rare anymore. Anyways, Determined Stranger is now an uncommon instead of a common. Alright, that seems reasonable. Determined Stranger was pretty much the most powerful Stranger that you could pick in draft, so Stranger draft is going to be a little bit harder now. Grenadin Drone is now a common instead of an uncommon. That makes it more likely to be seen in draft, so you'll be able to do more of that, like, token-based strategy with Synchronized Strike, so that's kind of neat. Horned Vorlunk is now common and appears in packs. I think that's going to be a pretty solid choice in packs, actually. It's a reasonably statted unit that resists Vanquish and resists Torch. This card's going to be pretty strong in draft. Infernal Tyrant is now a rare. That's pretty great. That card is pretty bonkers and certainly will make a fine rare. Longhorn Sergeant is now an uncommon, which means that it will be seen a little bit more in drafts. That'll be nice. Lurking Sanguar is now a rare instead of an uncommon. I don't really care about that all that much, but I guess it'll mean like a little bit less of it in draft. Not really a big deal. Mirror Image has new art. and is now an uncommon. So yeah, we'll actually be able to draft Mirror Image. I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, Protect. Protect is now uncommon instead of common. I don't know that that makes a lot of difference. You didn't see a lot of it in draft, but I guess it'll make it slightly less likely that you can just build a battlecruiser in draft, and battlecruiser drafts were always like sort of the most frustrating thing to get drafted against. I think you might have seen very recently us getting crushed by a Battlebore Centaur that just got like Valkyrie wings and like a couple of other big things like Gilded Glaive. I think there's been a significant move against that type of battlecruiser drafting, and moving the rarities around helps with that. So it should make draft a more fun landscape. All of these changes, by the way, are significantly increasing the possibility of a fun draft landscape. Refresh now appears in packs. It's fine. It's maybe even an okay trick. It's along the same line as Detain, as far as being like not super great for trades, but it's probably a little worse than Detain even. Not really anything you want to run. Could be seen in draft some. Ruthless Stranger is now uncommon, so yeah, strangers are becoming uncommon again. That's interesting. Shogun of the Wastes is now a legendary for some reason. Card doesn't really deserve to be a legendary, but it's a pretty powerful effect. Song of War is now rare instead of uncommon. That's fine. You certainly don't want to see it in draft, so that's okay. You also don't really want to see it in packs, though, so... Steadfast Deputy is now common and appears in packs. Should be good if you actually do want to make your battlecruisers, I guess. This card should be an okay and interesting draft card. Temple Student is now uncommon and appears in packs. I didn't know Temple Student was not in packs before. Well, that's a very strong card to pick in draft. I think you should do that. Tinker Apprentice is now an uncommon. That surprises me, but okay. Treasury Gate is now a legendary instead of a rare. That's fine. That is actually a card that probably should be a legendary. It certainly has like that kind of weird build around me text that makes it just designed to be a legendary. Treasury Guard is now a common and appears in packs, so you can actually draft Treasury Guards. I think that'll be a pretty strong card. Yeah, it'll be an okay card in draft. You still don't want to play it in anything else, but that's okay. Torrent of Spiders is now rare instead of uncommon. That's a reasonable change. Nothing special there. We're just not going to see it in draft at all. It wasn't really in draft before, but you know, doesn't really make too much of a difference here. Unlock Potential has gone from common to uncommon, so that's gonna be used a little bit less in draft. You're gonna have to rely on Synchronized Strike to make your token strategies work. Vodaken Staff is now a rare. Thank you so much. This card definitely needs to be a rare in order to be out of the draft pool, because yeah, it is a beating in draft. That is one of those cards that can just straight up win you the game. And Voice of the Speaker is now a rare instead of an uncommon, which means that you'll see a little bit less of it in the draft pools, and yeah, you won't actually be able to have access to this card for fixing early on in your career, which I think is appropriate because Voice of the Speaker is a trap card as far as fixing goes. It's really designed more to work with cards that specifically take advantage of that echo. So yeah, that's kind of a good change just for newbies. Out of the game, Auric Bailiff is gone. Avalanche Stalker is gone. Cabal Mastermind is gone. That one I'm really sad about. Cabal Rogue is gone. I'm really not sad about that one. Chill is gone. So no more one-cost stuns. Clever Stranger's gone. Cocoon is gone, which is kind of a little bit sad. I really liked the art for Cocoon. It was always a really good-looking card. And yeah, but obviously it didn't see much play. It's kind of funny that they removed it because like it had just started becoming a card that people played due to the prevalence of like Stonescar burn decks. Coup de Grace is gone, and that one I'm also really sad about. Those are two legendaries that I really loved. Crownwatch Commando is gone. That one is a very powerful card that hopefully we'll see again someday. Dimensional Rift is gone, and I'm really sad about that one. I hope it comes back for set 2. Yeah, I just built as I said, we just put up an article where we talked about like building around Dimensional Rift. It's gone now. Greed's Reward is gone. Felon Assassin is gone, but Felon Assassin was never really a card that was being played. Harbinger's Bite is gone. I played that card quite a bit, but nobody else did. Highway Bandit is gone. Hired Cavalry is gone. Force Field is gone. We just played some decks that used Force Field. It was kind of a fun card. I'm a little sad that it's gone, but it's not really a card that was played much. Jungle Prowler, Messenger Falcon, New Stranger has finally left the building. I'm a little sad about that one. Echo Stranger was kind of cute, and New Strangers were like a really interesting card. It's true that they were a bit of a trap for newbies, I think. They just aren't a very good card. Nomad Healer's gone. That one makes me a little sad. That was a card that I really liked in the early beta. Outland Sellsword, Overdrive is gone. Passage of Ages is gone, to my great dismay. Pit Fighter, Prosecutor at Arms, and Retribution are gone. Retribution is gone, and that one does make me quite sad. Yet another janky legendary that we never quite found a use for. I did play Retribution very early in the first like month or two of the beta. It was such a weird design. I kinda am gonna miss that one. Scepter of Nobility's gone, and I don't think anyone's gonna miss Scepter of Nobility. That card just never really did what it was supposed to do. It's a pretty significant trap. And also, Xenon Obelisk just always worked better. The replacement for that is the card that like allows you to draw cards when you play more cards. I can't remember what it is. The yellow 4-cost. Vault of the Praxis, right? And that's a significant improvement. Okay, so what else? Sickness, Sinister Warlock, and to great sadness, Slagmite Swarm is gone. A Sparring Partner has finally left the building, which is going to be a pretty significant change for Rakano decks. Sparring Partner was very, very strong and well resistant to Lightning Storm, which made a lot of Rakano decks like pretty nuts. I think there's been a significant amount of extra Rakano nerfs, which is fine because Rakano was still like the most popular by a landslide color, and I think it's still going to be very, very strong without Sparring Partner. But it's interesting to see yet another tool removed. Squad Strategist is gone. That card was pretty strong. Definitely a card to note that is not here anymore. Subtle Stranger has finally left the building, and alas, he just never did his job properly. Maybe someday he'll come back. Swift Stranger is gone. We know what his replacement is. Tireless Stranger is gone as well. So yeah, there are a few less toolkit Strangers, but at the same time, the Strangers that do exist are significantly stronger for it. Trained Rhinoc is gone, and Unexpected Arrival, alas, is gone. That was a really fun legendary. I hope that one comes back. Village Watch and War Elephant are gone, and Whip Chain, which was a fairly exciting purple weapon that really never saw play, is also gone. And that is it. That is all of our patch notes. Wow, that was a significant amount of patch notes. Let's play some games after that. But yeah, to the folks on YouTube, thank you guys so much for watching, and yeah, this has been a lot of fun. We will talk about more of this stuff later, and I hope that this was helpful. All right.